I mean, Andy was a genius, and eccentric. He could be really tough and cold, but he also could be really sweet and funny. And so he had a very good sense of humor, including about himself. He was one of the first artists, really, to have his own band, the Velvet Underground, in the 1960s. They then sort of separated later on, but he also had a discotheque called the Dom. They would perform at the Dom, and he was one of the first people to do a kind of a light show where they used different colored gelatins in front of the lights. He was actually criticized by the serious art world, by the intellectuals, because, you know, artists weren't supposed to be like hanging out in a discotheque with a crazy young band. All the people that Andy put in his films, the so-called superstars, he called them, I mean, they were, you know, mostly kids from the street. They were giving a lot to Andy. He was paying very little, like $25 a day to be in a movie. But they would not even have had any access. Hollywood was not going to pick these people up and star them in movies. So it was, you could say, a win-win or a lose-lose. I could say Andy was exploiting me, but you know, I was 22 years old. He made me editor of his magazine Interview, which was very small to start with, but who else gave opportunities to kids so young? And of course I wasn't being paid a lot of money, but you know, it was my first job, and I suddenly had a lot of attention, and I suddenly, you know, was going to Mick Jagger's birthday party with Andy. Well, Mick was this huge star. I mean, there was the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan. I mean, those were the biggest stars. They still sort of are. And, you know, Mick was very intelligent, very charming, very funny, could be kind of fey in a way. Like Andy, Mick was very fascinated by the high society in England and America. So, I mean, they were going to a lot of the same fancy parties. You know, the 70s, everybody kind of mixed much more. It was like it was as if the 60s sex, drugs, and rock and roll revolution like really happened in the 70s, you know. And we were the first generation, the so-called baby boomers, who were in our 20s, coming out of college, and everything was new. You know, the word gay didn't even exist till 1970. Cocaine was new. We didn't know it was really bad. We just thought you could stay up all night. And disco came in around 73, 74. This new music that came out of the black bars and went into the gay bars. So all the fashion designers and hairdressers would bring the beautiful models to the gay bars to dance to this disco music. Then, like all the straight boys started going to the gay bars too, because they wanted to meet the beautiful female models. And I don't know, all the barriers for a while between like uptown and downtown, rich and not so rich, black and white, gay and straight, like just seemed to like fall down. And it all culminated in this famous club called Studio 54, which opened in 1977, and where everybody would be there, from Cher and Diana Ross, Yves Saint Laurent and Valentino and Halston, and even Moshe Dayan, the Prime Minister of Israel. He was always tape recording. Like, he would be tape recording this interview now and taking your picture with his little Minox camera. He had like almost an obsession to record his times and to try to interview everybody, not just famous people. We would go to a dinner party, you know, like on Park Avenue, and Andy would like put his tape recorder on the table, and some of these hostesses would say, "Andy, what are you doing? I don't want my dinner conversation tape recorded." And then when we'd leave the party, Andy would say, "Oh, who does she think she is? You know, Bob, you have to tell them that my tape recorder is my wife." And I was like, "Andy, I don't think they're going to fall for this." I think Andy Warhol made Donald Trump. Someone asked me if Donald Trump was the son of Andy Warhol. I said yes, and Kim Kardashian's the daughter. because Andy was the first to have this idea that all publicity was good publicity. And Andy also said, as early as 1963, in the future, everyone will be famous for 15 minutes. This quote is everywhere, you know. And he was, you know, there was no cable TV, let alone social media. And today, everyone is famous on Instagram for 15 minutes. But people like the Kardashians, who are just famous for being famous, it's a very Warholian kind of concept. And Donald Trump, you know, he actually commissioned Andy to do paintings in the 1980s of the Trump Tower. And when the paintings were brought to Trump Tower for him to look at, he said, "Oh, I hate these. These make my building look ugly. I don't want them." And Andy published his diaries, or after he died, they were published. And he wrote one day, you know, "I ran into Donald and Ivana Trump at a party, and I still hate them because they didn't buy my paintings."